We don't show prep. So, so he had no idea.
I just barely make it in.
I'm sure you can tell, but we don't show.
I mean, let's put the cards down on the table here.
Miami Hurricanes, yeah. You know the name already. It's Mercy, ha ha. It's a 6-Rig Kane show. Can't forget the name though. Got Jazz, Blue, Vision, DJ break the game code. Ain't no changing them, ain't no breaking them. Real Portland live from the Hard Rock Stadium. Ball 14 for the orange and green. We see the 6-Rig champs. It's more than a dream. This is life on the field. Beyond 100 yards, a hurricane that's never still put a damage to your squad. The 6-Rig Kane show. The 6-Rig Kane show. The 6 Rings Kane show. You know.
What's wrong with us? Seriously.
What's wrong with us? We're Miami Hurricanes fans.
Welcome to the 6 Rings Kane Show, a show dedicated to Miami Hurricane sports, featuring the legendary Larry Bluestein, Jazz Santana, Vish, and Danny Gillette. Let's go Canes.
Let's go, Canes. Indeed, everyone. Welcome back to another edition of the 6 Rings Kane Show, joined by Blue and DJ. How's it going, guys?
Good. Doing good. Busy time of year.
Yeah, and spring ball is around the corner, which leads us into the first topic. So, the Canes have not filled out their coaching staff yet. They're still an open position. So, start with you on this, Blue. What do you think the timeline is for a defensive backs coach being named, and how concerned are you that, one, it hasn't happened yet, and two, are you okay going through potentially entering spring ball without a coach in place there?
Well, you would have liked to. Obviously, maybe, they got to the position where they didn't want to just rush in and just take anybody. They've done that in the past, and it didn't work out. So maybe they have somebody who's under contract or somebody who – is trying to make up their mind, and I don't know. That's probably it. I don't think they're doing it on purpose. Now, if it was a linebackers coach at this point, you'd say, you're, DC is a linebacker guy, so it doesn't matter. But there's really nobody on staff that's a DB coach, unless they have Mike Rumpf and Roland Smith working with them.
Yeah, but I mean, kind of been there, done that, right? So I don't know that.
Yeah.
Go back to that.
No,
DJ,
I'm
what
just
about you?
saying. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of weird. You figure I understand what you're saying about they, like you said, they've rushed into hires in the past and made mistakes, but it feels like they do need someone. And I mean, who's going to be available like a month that's not available now for them to just close on something? It's hard to imagine.
Yeah, that I don't know. Unless it's somebody who is trying to make a decision up during their spring.
True, maybe.
I don't know. Because I know a lot of players are going to be doing that, A lot of players that I think they're going to be shaking a few more players loose. And, and I'm sure this isn't the only place. But, no, I think there's bigger fish to fry. From what I heard, though, that it's a lot of guys are looking pretty good that have come on, a lot of young kids. And one of them's the kid I was talking about when they committed him that I thought he was one of the best players they have was a kid Dunnigan. And they said he's looking really good during, workouts and stuff. And I kind of figured he would. And there's I heard Darian Coleman's even spinning it a lot better than people thought.
Interesting.
But nothing to get excited about until they actually develop a quarterback that they're bringing in. But other than that, it's just next week's pro day, and then spring practice starts the day after. So I hope to get down to a couple practices and maybe a scrimmage or so and see what happens. But I think it's going to be a really good and productive spring. There's a lot of things to be answered there, a lot of new faces, and yeah.
Yeah. So DJ, what are your thoughts on kind of the open cornerback position, and are you concerned that they might go through spring practice without a coach there?
You would like to have a coach there for spring practice, kind of like verbatim what Blue said. You would like to have a coach there.
Pam.
I don't know if I'd use the word worried, but you would like to have a coach there, and you would think if it was someone internally, they would have been announced by now, and they would have done all that stuff, and maybe there is someone that we don't know about that's kind of waiting in the wings. But even still, why wouldn't you announce him by now? And I'm not exactly worried, but I do think it's a little bit strange that they don't have a defensive backs coach in place yet. It's going to be something to watch as spring practice starts. And, I know some take spring ball lightly as fans. Some fans say, oh, just spring practice. But, these prizes are important to develop time with coaches and to get to know the coaching staff as well as a player. So, getting a defensive backs coach in here, relatively before spring practice starts, or, maybe a couple practices after would be ideal, but who knows? I'm kind of mystified as to why they haven't hired one yet.
Yeah, no, it's interesting. And as Blue said, practice starts next week. I believe the 24th, so a week from tomorrow.
Next week from tomorrow.
Yep, a week from tomorrow. So yeah,
it's going to happen an hour after the show ends. That's what's going to happen.
If the Pats is any precedent, yes, the announcement of the head coach should be imminent at the conclusion of this show. All right, but speaking of Blue, you mentioned some position battles. We did get a little bit of reporting today on how the offensive line is shaking out. So it looks like, at least heading into spring ball, Ryan Rodriguez looks like he's gonna get first crack at starting at center. Going to have McCoy at either guard or tackle. They've been kind of thinking about playing him at both. Okunlola will be at guard, and then the kind of other options to potentially play are if McCoy's at tackle is Max Buchanan, Jamal Merriweather, transfer one, Minaya or SJ, and then they're still seeing if Jackson Cantwell might walk right into the starting lineup. So Blue, how do you see this position shaken out? Are you surprised by all that? I know we both thought that probably SJ would, he came in as a center, that he would take over that position. It looks like right now they're thinking Ryan Rodriguez instead.
That experience factor, guys had a lot of experience at all the spots. I think SJ's a little smaller than they had hoped. But I think he's got a good shot to listen. I feel very comfortable with Ryan Rodriguez. I think he's light years ahead of where Brockmeyer is anyway, was last year. So I feel a whole lot better.
I agree. Yep.
At that position. So no, that would be the least of, you get Samson Okunlola has the opportunity to do some really good stuff. Like you mentioned, Minaya, and then Matthew McCoy, and Jonathan Klein coming in should be, a big shot as far as experience factor. And then you mentioned SJ, Alafatuli, and Jackson Cantwell, and Max Buchanan has really shown some really, really major strides. So, I think coming into spring, they've got a good little group, and it's going to be awfully tough for Jackson Cantwell. It's I know he's big, strong, this and that and that and this, but to line up in a major college is, takes much more than being the best high school football player in the country. So it's especially at that position. But the very fact that he's got an experienced quarterback and a really good running game kind of lessens that that pressure. So, but the line's always going to be, any year that you have, is always going to be a concern. You're not going to be able to get what you got last year all the time. But I think they have the talent to develop into a pretty good unit. And like I said, the special the kids at receiver, quarterback, running back are always going to help. I'd like to see more experience at tight end because you don't have right now a real proven blocking tight end. And that always helps when, you look at the Iowas, you look at the Minnesotas, when their lines are good, their tight ends really enhance because they get those 6'6", 6'7", 280-pound kids that could block as well as get upfield and catch, as DJ will attest to.
Absolutely, but and I think you kind of bring up a good point here too. That just kind of brings back, how important the hire of Mike Vitti was as the tight ends coach. He has experience with blocking and playing physical and things like that. So I think if any of the tight ends don't know how to block now, they're gonna learn how to block by the time spring practice is over. But it's gonna be really interesting to see. You mentioned some position battles and depth chart battles. Tight end obviously is one of them. I'm very intrigued, not just with the offensive line, but also where the carries go in the running back room. So there's a lot of I know fans are kind of meh about spring practice sometimes, but there's a lot of intriguing things to kind of watch as spring practices get underway. And like you've mentioned before, Blue, there's a lot more depth in this program than there was 3 or 4 years ago, and that just makes the program better, and that makes the competition better. So I'm excited to see what comes out of this spring.
And I also think, DJ, while we're talking about the tight end position, I think that their decision on Lofton's going to probably be he's an athlete. And, they got to give up the idea that he's a tight end because he's really not, a tight end. I mean, he's tight end in name. But I think I think they're probably trying to devise ways to get him 4 or 5 touches a game.
Yeah.
And, which in this offense with all this talent is a lot.
Yeah.
You got all those backs and you got all those receivers and you got Malachi who are going to say, hey, well, wait a minute. If you're going to give those 4 or 5 touches to somebody else, that's taken away from what we need to have. But I think that for him to be productive in the position to be productive, they've got, and I'm not just saying throw to him. I'm saying maybe line up in the backfield or, put him in motion and he could throw a little bit too. So, yeah. So I just think they're going to try to use him as that Swiss Army knife. And I think they'll do it. I think, not putting the pressure on him to play the tight end position on every play, because I think the tight end position on Miami this year is going to be more predicated to be on a blocker than it is to be a actual receiving tight end, because they've got too many weapons to throw to and too many carries in the backfield. So I would think.
Well, who do you think? So looking at that tight end position, then DJ and I kind of went through that a little bit on yesterday's show, and
Luka
kind of slim pickings though. You think he's ready to step up and be that blocking tight, or do you think potentially they go with another lineman and kind of really?
You know what? 100%. You just took the words out of my mouth. They may just go to another lineman. And then if need be, but like DJ said, part of the blocking is going to be with your offensive line coach. And I think he's going to spend, let's put it this way, the tight end, the true tight end, like McConaughey and those guys are going to spend the spring blocking more so than catching. They got enough guys to catch the ball.
Yeah, and when you look at how, I should say, kind of not frequently we throw the ball to tight ends as it is, combined with a blocking tight ends coach, I think we kind of know what we're gonna get out of the tight end position, and that's not a bad thing. I mean, because you look at our running game and how physical it is, and how much our running backs are forced to memorize different formations and memorize different, holes to run the ball through and how that could change on any particular drive. Just having an extra blocker or two is going to help a lot. And so I think making the tight end position a blocking position in this offense is not a bad thing at all, because, we kind of compared the depth between the tight end and the wide receiver position. In the wide receiver position, it's a who's who in terms of talent. The tight end position is a little bit more thin, but I think if you just, kind of give way to the wide receivers instead, that might not be the worst thing in the world. As much as it pains
and I
me
could
so.
see some double tight end formation with, with a blocking tight end, and then maybe your eight, whatever they're going to call, your H-back. Because he's like, again, I refuse to believe that he's a tight end. I've seen him.
He's not.
No, he's not.
Yeah, and to your point, Blue, they tried to do some of what you're talking about last year in terms of just creative ways to get the ball. And it didn't. Yeah, it didn't really work. I mean, if you recall, they were running reverses with him, lining up at fullback and handing him the ball. They were trying to do that. This guy's an athlete. Let's get him the ball, and it didn't bear fruit last year. But also to your point, right? He doesn't really have a position. So, don't know what to do with him.
But not only that, they made it painfully obvious when he was going to get the football either, so that didn't help either. So I don't know.
Yeah.
They just have never been able to figure out what to do with him, and you wonder if that time's ever going to come or if we're just going to keep hoping.
Well, here's the thing, too. If he goes in motion and he's going to really pick up a linebacker. If he's a tight end, he's going to pick up a lineman, but if he lifts up and then becomes somebody in motion, then you get a linebacker. And I think that getting him in space is going to be probably an asset, and even getting him upfield, because he'll draw the linebacker who'll give way to a safety. And I think that he has the speed to kind of, but I think you're going to see him get his hands on the ball probably a lot more ways than catching. He could, tight end jet sweeps. I've seen it.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Get him in motion, maybe pitch him the ball and let him throw, because he's got a fairly decent arm. Listen, if you let Mawanoa catch the goddamn ball last year, everything's up for grabs. So,
fair.
It's sort of like,
yeah.
I know it was a 4-year promise, but still, I still have that feeling that if Elijah Lofton didn't think that he would be an integral part of this offense, he would have left. Because there's hundreds of schools that he would fit in, you get a tight end strong team, like a Minnesota or an Iowa, he fit in perfect, because then he doesn't have to light up at the tight end, more of a slot guy, but a slot guy that weighs 200 something pounds. So, yeah. So I think from that standpoint, they really don't have a great tight end room right now. It's weird because a year ago, with everybody that they had in there, you said, wow, potentially tight end could be really good for them. But then you had the kid that left for Indiana, and then he got hurt, and then
but he wasn't
really showed he couldn't freaking block worth of crap, and then touch people when he needed to.
At the optimal moment, he showed he couldn't block worth of crap. Very high profile demonstration for the whole world to see. But I do think, DJ and I were talking about this yesterday as well. The depth chart wasn't that different. It was we thought Lofton was the guy, and then there would be, Bauman and like you said, Brock Schott kind of supplementing, but it would really be.
Well, didn't you have what's his name brother on the roster too?
Oh yeah, we got Jackson Carver and Hunter Carver.
Yeah, you had a lot more.
Well, they're still there.
Well,
yeah, but they're in. I think the issue is what I was gonna say is it's not that different than last year. So we know a lot more about the players, and now the answers we got to the questions that were open last year were not good. Like we kind of didn't know exactly what Elijah Lofton was going to be. Now, he didn't live up to our expectations in terms of playmaking, but I do think he confirmed, to your point, Blue, that he's not going to be your every down tight end. So now you don't really have, because last year we kind of thought, okay, he would be taking a majority of those tight end snaps. And not only did that not happen, but he kind of showed that wasn't a good role for him. So now, if we came into last year knowing, well, Bauman's going to take a majority of the tight end snaps, I don't think we would have felt great about that. And now we're kind of looking similar. Like, all right, I guess it's Luka Gilbert that's going to take a majority of these snaps. And yeah, there's not a lot there. So we'll see.
How do you guys feel about a guy like Jackson Carver? Because he came in here with a lot of promise, a lot of talent. We saw the tapes and whatever, but he just hasn't been able to kind of reach that next level. Is he a guy that you guys think could really make an impact this year, or will we still be waiting for him to kind of reach that level that we all thought he could potentially play at?
Yeah, I think he's going to kind of make his own decision up. He's going to see during spring if he doesn't show any improvement, because he's been here for a minute.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's a good question. I mean,
has he ever been healthy though? I feel like he's just constantly
not often.
Because he was on all those. He didn't play last year, but he was on every single week once we had to start doing those injury reports. He was on there every week as out. Like he was not healthy. He had a serious injury the year before. I don't know. I feel like that position there are snaps available at it for sure. That's why I think one of the reasons McCarthy moved over is like even learning in kind of a new position and just going over there. There are snaps. If he blocks, if he gets a hat on and moves players, he will get on the field. Like I think that's the case.
He blocks, he's guys. In.
Yeah, I think any of these guys, if they block, they'll get on the field.
And it's weird. I'm just looking up like Jackson Carver's injury history, and it said that in a lot of the injury reports, the injury was never disclosed. He was just listed as out or someone who had a long-term injury. So I am kind of wondering what's going on there.
Yeah. You know what the whole thing is he's going to have to get. He's going to have to. I think this is as they say, is coming to Jesus year right here.
Yeah. No.
Or maybe even coming to Jesus spring.
Yeah.
And I mean, the depth chart will never be more open than it is right now.
Yeah.
Anyone that's on the depth chart, if you show up, you block, you work hard, you'll get on the field. There's not an entrenched starter or anything close to that, or really anyone that you're assuming is going to get playing time. So it's really going to be how they practice over the spring to get a leg up going into fall for that position.
I agree.
It's there to be won.
Yeah.
It's there to be won.
Yeah.
All right, so we talked the O-line, we talked tight end. What other position battles are you two most intrigued by? Blue, I guess we can throw it to you real quick. You mentioned, was this off air or during I think this was during the show. You mentioned Darian Coleman was kind of surprising some folks with how well he's
slid the ball. Spin the ball pretty well.
Yeah, so do we think, I think the thought obviously Mensah starting this time. I'm not crazy, but the backup position is open there. Do you think he's on even footing with Nickel going into spring? Because there's something to be Nickel's been in the program a year. They're obviously both highly touted high school quarterbacks with pedigree. How do you see that looking?
The whole thing is you're going to have to get in a situation where. Obviously Mensah is your guy. And it got to the point last year that Miami needed the great showing and the great, point differential that, like in the Pittsburgh game with 6 minutes left, they're up by 31 points. And that would have been a nice time to bring in Luke Nickel, but they were out to put on as many points as they could to impress, to get into the thing. So, unless Mensah gets injured, I don't think you're going to see many of the backup quarterbacks rather than on a mop-up duty. I think that's where Miami's, unfortunately, that's where we are in college football, where it's, and it's weird because in Miami's heyday, they very rarely ran up the score. Like you would look and see Oklahoma put up 74 points. Yeah, Miami's not going to do that. Miami's not that type of program. They just, you see, but now, you figure if they get into that type of stratosphere, they're going to want to impress because well, you're playing Florida A&M. Yeah, but we beat them 89-0, so
Yeah.
I think that's where you're going to get in that that situation. I don't like it. I mean, win the game, get out of there, and that's it. Play your players. If you have to start watching scoreboards, and you can't tell me they didn't in the Pitt game because they did.
Oh yeah.
That was definitely one of those games.
That one, and then also the Virginia Tech one the week before, throwing touchdowns on the last play of the game instead of kneeling the ball.
Well, it's because they looked like crap the rest of the game, and they had you look at that game, and that was kind of a close on the scoreboard game.
Yeah, it was.
So, they figured, and truthfully, I think we sat here on that following Monday and said, it's going to be awfully tough now. That's showing against Virginia Tech, and you were there, Vish, so it wasn't exactly a great showing. Mm-hmm. And they go, well, we're going to really have to amp it up against Pitt, and that's why they did what they did. And I think that was the game that got them in it because of the fact that how they manhandled Pitt and Notre Dame didn't, and somebody else didn't. And I think, you see, and if we're playing that type of game every week, that depth chart means crap. Really?
Yeah, I think it also though, I mean, look, we've talked about this a bit. I'm sure we'll talk about it heading into the season. Last year's entirety of it is not repeatable and not advisable. You got to win the stupid conference. Like the idea that we're having to run the score up against Pitt to sneak into the back end of the playoffs with that team that we had is just not acceptable. Like this is clearly the class of the ACC. It would be one thing if you're in a situation where Florida State or Clemson's elite and they're also top 5 and okay, maybe you get to the conference title game and lose to one of the, but there's no one close to this team in the conference, and all of that happened because you blew the SMU and Louisville game. So to me, there's plenty of time to get the backups in against FAMU and should be in these other ACC games too. Frankly, you shouldn't be in a lot of competitive games. Like the first game is at Stanford. Stanford's not good. You should be up comfortably in the third quarter and be able to bring in your backups, especially with a short week to FAMU coming up because they're on the next Thursday. To me, take care of business. You don't have to worry about that. All of that happened because they yacked games to Louisville and SMU. All this having to run the score up, then go to Texas A&M and Ohio State and Ole Miss and all of that. All of that was a product of failing in the regular season when they shouldn't have.
Yep.
So if you take care of, frankly, if you just lose once, there's no way you're missing the playoffs. So. And the teams that they play, they shouldn't even lose once, let alone more than once. So I do think that going back to the quarterback stuff, to your point, Blue, they're not going to get in a competitive situation unless Benson gets injured. But I do think this is almost like a 2-year journey now for them. They're going to next season, and then they're going to back up Mensa. They have to show both Nickel and Coleman, at least one of them, has to show in practice, in preparation. Not only am I distancing myself from the other guy, this is going to be my job, but also Mario is going to be comfortable handing me the keys to this engine, to this car, so I can drive it, so he doesn't go into the portal and get another veteran quarterback to start next year, right? I mean, that's been 3 years in a row he's gone into the portal and grabbed a veteran because he didn't trust what was in house. So to me, it's the spring battle, in the season, these guys should not be taking meaningful snaps. But in the spring, they've got to show this is a chance to get extended playing time. They've got to beat each other out. Someone needs to win the backup job and then really convince the coaches, not just in spring, but in fall practice and through the season that, hey, next year, you're fine with me starting. You don't need to go and get another quarterback in the portal. And so to me, there's a lot riding on who earns that backup job and how well they perform in practice to show the coaches that they're set quarterback and they don't need to get another one because every year it's been, let me go get a quarterback.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, no. Sounds easy, but you know what? We thought the same stuff last year that we should know there's no game. These games should be runaways, and
Yeah, no, for sure.
still got to play. And
But I also don't think as much as I think the team has the potential to let's be real, get the extra 40 yards they needed this year because they're usually we're like they won 6 games. I think they can do better now. It's like literally just had to get 40 more yards, right? So there's not that much room to improve. But while I think the team can finish the job next year, I don't think they can run through the gauntlet last year's team did. Like if they end up as a 10 seed going to an SEC team and then having to play a team with like 4 first-round picks in the second game, and then having to go play the best offense in college football, and then turn around and play it undefeated. Like they're not going to be able to do that. Like it was a miracle this team almost did it.
Yeah.
And so they've got to just be better in the regular season. To me, this idea that we're running up the score in the last few games to try and eke into the back of the playoffs is just, if we're in that position again, that's a big failure.
Yeah, I agree.
All right, so we talked a little quarterback. We talked O-line tight. Any other positions you're looking at? DJ, throw it to you first.
Running back, because I don't know where all the touches are going to go. Yes, Mark Fletcher's a starting running back, but then you have, so much talent. You have Brown, you have Pringle, who I really like. You have all these guys that want touches and, want to get the football, and only so many to go around. So it's not a question of who's going to step up at running back, because quite frankly, they all can. It's just a question of where all these touches going to go. So that's we might not see that and get a definitive answer on that during spring ball, but I'll be curious to see who emerges as, the backup running back, or who is, showing themselves alongside Fletcher to be kind of the bell cow for when Fletcher, needs a breather.
Yeah.
No, that's good. Go ahead.
I agree. But remember, the position that is Marty Brown is already carved out. We already know what Marty Brown is going to be. Marty Brown is a short yardage guy. He's going to be that, that grounded out. He may have a series or two where he's got the hot hand and he's getting 5 yards a carry, and he's wearing down the linebackers, and then he catches.
Very well.
And he blocks, so he's
probably the best pass catching back on the team, I think.
Oh yeah. But like I said, so we already know his status. It's just how many carries Lyles Pringle gonna get. It's a shame that Wheatley Humphrey, because this, unfortunately, because of the fact that unless he's going to do his returns, unless he's just going to stay on kick returns, because this will be the last year, because Nick Lanier will be the kick returner for eternity, best in the nation now. He ain't going to run 40 yards in somebody's back. That's for damn sure. This is a very, very, and it's a shame because somebody like Wheatley Humphrey is really good. He's really versatile. He's got good burst catches, but you still got 3 guys in front of him 4 guys, really. What's going to be with Lyles? I want to see what's going to be.
Yeah, this is going to be a big spring for him.
That's the player I'm most interested to see, because I can't believe he's still here, to be honest.
Yeah.
He was what I was like, I would have bet anything that he would be in the portal this
year. I 100% agree with you. I never thought he'd be
so he must have some kind of at least opportunity in his mind that he can get on the field here and play. So, where does he fit in then? He's definitely more of a iffy. Again, it's big if, because we haven't seen it, but on paper, he would be, sharing carries with Fletcher. He's the complete back type like Fletcher is, whereas Pringle's more of a scat back, and Blue did a good breakdown of what Marty brings to the table. So really interested to see what happens with him. But Blue, to your point, if Wheatley Humphrey doesn't, take a step forward in terms of just forget ability, but playing time this year, he's got Javian Mallory breathing down his neck too. Like at some point, you got to just, understand.
Yeah,
you have
no,
to
I
play.
understand.
So
He's a really good back, and it'd be a shame to kind of, you almost wish there weren't other guys, but there are. So,
yeah, and I think that's why I'm so surprised no one left.
Yeah.
Pringle briefly entered the portal and then came back because I mean I think the reason that there's so many running backs here is first of all it's Mario who wants to run the football. We have had significant injury issues through basically every year where we've needed that depth.
2022 comes to mind.
Yeah,
with,
but even last year.
Lucius Stanley and
No, we played a walk on
Yeah.
in 2022, but even last year, Fletch gets injured. Marty wasn't running the ball well at that point in the season, and that's why we all of a sudden remember Pringle didn't play until like November.
And then he played, and we're like, "Whoa, he's pretty
and then
good."
he had his 3 games where he dominated.
Yeah, and then
absolutely.
he went back to not playing once Fletcher came back healthy. But like that, it wasn't. You're not that far away, especially with the physical brand of football we want to play and the number of time, how much we want to run the football. You're not that far away from needing all of this depth. Because remember, last year Lyle got hurt, and then Fletcher got hurt, and the next thing you're doing to Brown and Pringle, and it was not effective. The end of that SMU game, that was not a good running game after Fletcher essentially and Carson kind of carried the team out to midfield to ice that game, and Fletcher got hurt. And that definitely impacted the running game, trying to finish that game off, as well as in overtime. So you're not that far away from needing all this depth, but I do think a lot of the recruiting is based on the assumption that Fletcher would not be coming back this year.
Yeah,
I think all signs point to him leaving, and especially with a running back that's been playing since his freshman year and playing significantly. The NFL, they judge harshly if you have a high workload in college because there's a limited shelf life. So
it's hard to get a second contract. Yeah.
A lot of this was probably targeted at the assumption that he would not be back, and obviously it's great he's back, and he's definitely the starting running back, but that pushes everyone else down. To lose when you kind of wish people left, so we hope we can get more of a shot. But then on the other hand, you'd rather have everyone back. But I think that's why it's so surprising none of those kids hit the portal. But we'll see. There's also a new running backs coach, and Matt Merritt did a lot of the deciding who got the playing time. So we'll see how that plays out. I guess before we pivot to a little bit of recruiting and Blue Show and how Pimp Down in the chat, shout to Pimp Down. He is watching linebacker. How do you two feel about the linebacker position heading into the spring?
Well, I think it was greatly enhanced with Torrey and Chase Smith coming back.
Yep.
Because if even though Cam Pruitt, I think is, I think he's a guy that has an opportunity to be pretty special, and so does Kellen Wiley, and then Kamal Bonner. I think now those guys are more or less, guys that are going to be part of the depth chart where somebody like Torrey and Chase Smith. I think Chase Smith, Torrey, and Cam Pruitt are your first 3 guys, and then Wiley and Bonner are going to be rotational guys. So you don't have a lot of depth, but I think you have better talent. Remember, Muhammad was their leading tackler, so obviously, and he's got years of experience. So does Chase Smith. I'm not worried because I think the front 5 guys, 4 or 5 guys up front are pretty damn good. So, I mean, in many ways, I think potentially with Lightfoot and Justin Scott and with the return of Moten because of he's a space eater type guy, and then you got Damon Wilson coming in. I think those guys right there are a really good frontline group. And then let's see, Armando Blunt, I think he's going to be really special. Does Hayden Lowe come back and have, he didn't play at all. And then you got Herbert Scroggins, who I know can play. And then you got Keona Davis. So I think from that standpoint, and then Booker Pickett. So I think that front 4 group right there, I think that's a really, really solid group, plus the backups. So I think that makes the front 7 a lot better. In some respects, it could be as dynamic as last year. Because listen, Bain was great, but his productivity from a stat standpoint wasn't over the moon.
Good point. Yeah.
And I mean, to be honest with you, I mean, he's great. He creates problems with his pressure.
Yeah.
But I'm talking about productivity. To me, when you look at every game and then all of a sudden Mohamed Touré has 11 tackles or 12 tackles, see, that's productivity.
Mm.
And yeah, I mean, Messidor had, but I think between Messidor and Bain, I think to be honest with you, I think Wilson and Lightfoot have the potential to put up better numbers. I would think.
I was thinking the same thing as you were talking about them, because you look at how much of a playmaker, those two are as well. And like you said, Bain was so impressive because he was able to just disrupt plays in the backfield instantly.
Yeah.
It didn't always show up on the stat sheet, but he was able to be that disruptor.
Yeah.
I think this incoming group can record the stats, if you will, as be those disruptors. And I think, although some fans may be thinking there might be a drop off on the defensive line, I don't think.
Yeah, I don't think so. I really
much
don't.
of a drop off at all. Yeah.
Because I think Moten is really the undervalued guy, because sometimes he's got to be double teamed because he's so wide and you got to play so low. So you've got to have some really good offensive lines, because Miami's defensive line, especially, go back and watch Damian Wilson from last year. That bitch is athletic as hell. Mm-hmm. So you get that athleticism, and that Marquise Lightfoot working with JT the last 2 years has enhanced him. And then Wade, a healthy Wade, I just think from a creating more havoc and making plays, Miami's I think they're just as good, because who did you lose from linebacker? Wesley, who made plays, but you didn't lose your main guy, and that's Mohamed Touré.
You lost Popo also.
Yeah, he didn't play.
He was rotated. No, I mean, but you talk about we lost some depth, I think, more than anything else.
You lost more. Yeah, okay, you lost depth, but I think they still have depth this year. I think that Kellen Wiley left the last couple of games, showing that he was really improving and picking up things more.
And I felt the same way about Lightfoot. Over the back half of the season, he really showed up strong.
Well, he went, I think last year you saw him mature from like just a pass rusher to an actual defensive lineman.
Yeah.
He used to come in and pass situations, chase the quarterback around. By the championship game, he was taking on blockers and pushing them back. And it's like, all right, I don't know if y'all remember, there was one play in particular where he just destroyed the running back trying to pick him up off the edge. And it's like, you weren't seeing that at the beginning of the year. Honestly, playing 2 seasons worth of games helped a lot of these younger players develop.
He really played at a high level against Ohio State, too. There were a couple times in the Ohio State game where I was like, holy shit, this kid is pretty damn good.
Don't undervalue Armando Blunt either. Because, I mean, if you look back at the last couple of games he played in, he was always on the move, and he was always – you saw his number right around the action all the time. No, I think their defense is going to be really good. They're very fast. They got playmakers up front, and I feel good about their secondary.
So, speaking of secondary, kind of overlapping on linebacker, where do you see Omar Thornton's role being? Do you think he'll play down the box some as well to supplement that linebacker position? Because they went and got him. Obviously, there was some attrition out of the secondary with both Keontae Scott and Jacoby Thomas, who were, bang on starters all the time. And so you go get Thornton, like, all right, he's probably going to slot at linebacker at safety. But then they supplemented that position further with several other guys. So it's kind of, do you think he's going to be more down the box maybe and play a little linebacker, or do you think he's going to play more traditional safety?
Yeah, I think he plays that what they call a drag safety. I think he plays that strong safety position, because you got Poyser at the free, and then obviously Ethan O'Connor and Fitzgerald at the nickel and the corner, and then you've got, I think, 2 guys that I mean, we'll see how. I mean, I'm sorry, OJ Frederic at the left corner spot. But I think let's see what Damari's like. Let's see if you get any health out of him. But I think that the two guys, you got Xavier Lucas, I'm telling you, as you mentioned, extra names with Xavier Lucas and Dylan Day, who I thought looked good at times. You're still in a learning, and then you still have like Damari, and then you have an opportunity because I think this kid JJ Dunnigan cracks a free safety position by by early in the season. I think he's that good.
Yep,
I mean,
he is.
I watched
Right,
film
so-
on him, and I even said it. I had Mario, on the show a couple weeks ago, and I mentioned that to him. I said, "Listen, I'm not going to get away from the fact that I watched JJ Dunnigan, and he may be one of the best kids since Arthur Brown to come out of Kansas. I'm telling you, there's not a lot of guys
He's good.
come out of Kansas like that, but that kid, I mean, he's long, he's strong, he's quick, very intelligent, flies to the ball. And I think he's going to do it at this level. And from what I understand in the drills, that he's just blowing people away.
He's
and
fast.
I knew it. I just watched him,
Yeah.
Bish. I watched every one of his high school games, and I'm thinking I kind of like grandfathered in the fact that a few of the games he was playing, shit competition, but he was right there on everything. So
He's fast.
I think, but
He's
I
very
think
fast.
if you run down everybody in the healthy Damari Brown, and then the linebackers we just went over, and then the defensive line, they're going to be pretty damn good.
Yeah.
Well, this is why. I mean, you just went through a pretty, stacked depth chart. I mean, you mentioned Conrad Hussey coming in from Oregon State as
you
well
got
as
Hussey
potential
coming
safety.
in.
That's why I was, Thornton's more of a bigger physical safety. That's why I was
But
thinking he might get some snaps down in the box to,
he may.
it's more of a whatever what May uses called the striker position, but kind of floating in the box because I don't think there are that many snaps for him at safety, to be honest.
Well, he may get that strong safety position because of the fact that he'll get more snaps there, and then like you said, well, it's kind of the problem they had with James. What's his name too? A couple years ago, the kid from
William.
the kid he's in the NFL. Well, the big 6'5" kid.
Yeah.
I can't think. Who was it?
I know who you're talking about. I can't remember the last name.
I mean, that Pat Surtain was the only one was smart in high school and played him in the box. Because he got here and maintained he wanted to play safety, and he reminded me of somebody. At the end of the game, he was the only one with a clean uniform because he was too far back. But I just think that Omar's a physical kid, like you said, but he's got some looseness in his hips. And I remember in high school, he's pretty agile. But you look, and I sat there and dissected this defense the other day. I went over this with Mario on the radio show, and talking about how a lot of these younger kids or new kids are really going to infuse this team, and they are. And I think that Danny, when you just went over Lightfoot, his improvement, and then remember Wade's got just loads of ability, and he just needs to get back. He needs to get on the field, and even Pickett. You remember last year when he got in the games? I know it was mop-up duties and some things. At least he made plays.
You heard his name called, that's for sure, yeah.
Yeah, well, and I just think, and Blunt the same way. Every team can get better. I mean, Ohio State's going to have deficiencies because they lose kids every year, and you're going to say to yourself, well, can this 9-star fill in over here? He hasn't played it down yet. But that's the thing. They're all questions until they're answered. So, yeah, I'm not worried. I think this is a really good football team.
Mm-hmm.
Are they a great team? That remains to be seen.
Yeah.
But I think at a lot of positions, at quarterback, at receiver, at running back, they have kids that would line up on any team in the country. Any team in the country. their offensive line is not what it was last year, but I still think it's good. Yeah, he did put on a few pounds, Lightfoot, to answer your question. He did put on a few pounds. He did, but yeah. And especially if you look at the thing that really stands out, obviously did, but his technique, the way his technique and working with JT. Listen, I saw it firsthand what JT could do. I saw what he did with Nicholas Benito. When Nick came in from U School and went to St. Thomas, I saw what he did to him. He turned him into an all-pro, is what he's turned him into. So I know and that's why I'm so adamant about JT. It's never going to be about the money with him. Remember that.
Right.
He just has to be, comfortable in his position, and his wife is involved. His little kid is involved. They all come to the practices. See, to me, that's a telltale sign that, that he's comfortable. And as long as he's comfortable, and, hell, he's the only one that's lasted all these regimes.
That's also a very good point, actually, too, because there have been a few, but he's always been the constant, and the results have paid off. And the name that you were thinking of, Blue, was James Williams.
James Williams. There you go.
But this is a team that, while very young, has a ton. While very young in certain spots, I should say, has a ton of potential. And although that may have some growing pains in the beginning half of the year, by mid-October, early November, we may see them really hit their stride, and it could set the foundation of the program for seasons to come. So in that respect, I really like this team too. There's a lot of veterans on this team, but there's also a lot of young talent that not only can make an impact this year, but can also, kind of solidify the foundation for several seasons.
But you bring up a great point, DJ, because last year at this time, you say, well, they had a lot of veterans, but we don't know about this. We don't know about this kid from Auburn. Was he any good? See, those guys are the ones that really stepped up.
Yep.
And you could see, oh, I see. I see why. I see, and that's what I think you have this year in and a couple of kids. So, no. But if you could put that up there about Moten, because I mentioned that before. Yeah. I agree with you, Richard, because he is a grown man. But not only that, he's a real big-time space eater. And he's learned he's gotten very, 90% better technically. So you put that in the fact that, and I believe he's the strongest player on the team. So that kind of helps as well.
The other thing, talking about last year, and we learned a lot about how much it takes to actually get to the championship game, nearly win the thing. Because, ideally we're playing 16 games again, right? Because while we hopefully don't have to play the first round of playoffs, we ideally have been playing the ACC championship game. So that was a game we didn't play in last year. You need this depth. It's 16 games. You need the depth. We ran out of corners because of the targeting on Xavier Lucas in the championship game. We ran out of tight ends because Lofton got hurt, and we just had Bauman, and that was basically it. Who had taken 8 snaps this year. So
that's an NFL year right there.
Yeah, so I feel like there is more. It's less known quantities, like y'all have been saying, like Bain and Mesidor coming back for another year last year, but there's just so much more depth and guys able to contribute that actually built last year as we kind of had to play so many guys to get through that. Just as an example, now we know worst case we can hand it to Pringle, he's fine. Right, and last year it was like, there better be Fletch, this Marty Brown guy from North Dakota State. Okay, I don't know anything about him now. So I think that season was very informative too, not just in how much it takes to get there, but playing that many games allowed a lot of these younger players to get significant action. So now that they're being put into a starting role, they've played a lot. Like Justin Scott might have been the best defensive tackle on the team by the end of the year.
No doubt.
He wasn't playing at the beginning of the year, and he got forced into action through injuries and all that, and then couldn't get him off the field. And part of that
But
was
he and
played so many
Jacoby
games.
Thomas both
Yeah.
are guys that you have to remember were elite kids coming out of high school that went to major colleges. And people lost track of that by thinking, oh, they weren't here. So, but let me tell you something. They were dudes. And they're both going to play in the league. So, yeah.
No, that's
Who was the
Don't-
corner? Who
You
was the
got-
corner that came in and covered Jeremiah for that one? I'm blanking on his name right now. He came in and his first snap was against Jeremiah Smith. It was, and I thought he did such a good job too. And I'm blanking on his name.
Yeah. I mentioned him just now, didn't I? God damn it, I can't think.
God damn.
It's gonna bother me.
It wasn't Ethan O'Connor.
I don't know.
No. It was a freshman basically taking his first snaps. I know exactly what DJ's talking
Yeah.
about. It's Jabari Anton. That's who.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, Jabari
Yep.
Antoine. That's right, number
Yeah.
16.
Yeah. All of a sudden he's like, all right, you're gonna guard Jeremiah Smith. And,
Yeah.
he got beat a few times because it's Jeremiah Smith, but he stood his ground. And then in the next game,
No, he did well.
This
He did well.
and this is a good example of how we actually had to build depth over the back half of the season. By the next game, once Xavier Lucas got thrown out, like, all right, you're out there.
Yeah.
On those critical drives at the end of the game, he's playing corner and matched up with their receivers
Yeah.
against Ole Miss and trying to hold that lead. And
Who are also
all
good
that-
receivers in their own right too. Not
all
Jeremiah
of
Smith
that, all
level,
of that is learning experiences that'll pay off this year and going forward.
Yeah.
So.
yeah.
All right. Before we pivot to some show and tell and some recruiting news, definitely shout out to Blue. If you weren't aware, he has been inducted in the Florida Coaches Hall of Fame. That was actually a couple of weeks ago, but Terra 30 will had not had opportunity to congratulate you. We all do. We're all,
Yeah.
of course, very very proud of Larry Bluestein and
Yeah.
honored to share these airwaves. With
Yeah,
him. So,
not me. Come on now.
No, it's the truth. It's the truth.
it is the
Not the
truth.
trophy, but
You can.
It was supposed to be show and tell tonight, but I didn't get it out of the package.
All right. So, what do you have any recruiting news you want to throw? I mean, you don't have to if there's nothing that you really.
Yeah, there really hasn't. I know that they're starting to look at John Vilma's son. Believe it or not.
Good God.
Son. Uh-oh.
I went to college with John Vilma. I'm feeling very old now. He was the savior of Miami. Crap. Anyway.
Yeah,
Yeah.
they really, and you know what's going to be neat when they start a practice next week. They're going to have a lot of kids that are going to be coming on campus from high schools, and just to watch. And it's weird because you go to a practice and you want to go see UM, and then everybody's paying more attention to the 9-star that's sitting on the sideline. Oh, there's so-and-so. Forget about the fact that Miami needs to win here for them to get that guy. Let's
Yeah.
concentrate on those guys there. Yeah, it's nothing really that's earth-shattering. That's recruiting wise right now. They're still
Kind of a down, a little
other
bit of
than
down
Nick
period,
Lanier,
so.
and I think that'll be
Yeah.
that'll be something that's going to stick. That's going to be the prize guy. It's going to be the Jackson Cantwell of the next class as far as status. Yeah, Nick's a dude, man. He really is, and the thing is since ever, and the thing about him is everyone always minimizes. Oh, he doesn't have this. He doesn't. Yeah, right. He's going to be in the end zone more times than you're going to believe, and he's a good dude, and he likes it here, and I think he sees, again, all these people criticizing Miami for not getting local kids. He's one of those guys, and there's a time though, and you got to realize that there's players better elsewhere than there is here, and you just go after them. And I think Miami has become that nationally recruiting base now, where you're getting kids from all over and you're getting interest from all over, and I would embrace it rather than say, why didn't you get a kid from Central or Northwestern or this school? So yeah, they're gonna be fine. They're going to be fine. You just, like I said, you win, and and that's all it takes. That everything takes care of itself.
If you build it, they will come, as the old
Yeah.
Field of Dreams movie says, and it's the truth.
No, I agree, and I mean, and not to shine any light on any of the competition, but you see, that's what positive is happening in Gainesville with him. He's shining the light on all that great stuff, and that's what you got to do.
Yeah.
I mean, Urban Meyer asked him the other day, how much you benching? And he goes, well, I'm deadlifting to 380. So all those kids love that. I mean, he says, I don't want to be out someplace and get my ass kicked. He said. So, your coach makes a difference.
Yeah.
Mario going on that little thing and going up to Gainesville and being part of the Steve Spurrier thing was great because he had a comeback for everybody, including Kirby Smart, about Beck. He goes, if you guys would have coached that guy up, then he wouldn't have come here. I like things like that because, he goes, you're supposed to be Lane Kiffin's best buddy, man. You're starting to take players like him. Yeah. He goes, I don't know what you were in the SEC, but we were 5-0. He said. Yeah, those things, and kids like that. Kids like when you diss somebody like that. But that was it.
Yep. All right, so Blue, I know you said you didn't have a chance to unbox your trophy. Do you have a show and tell for us at all? Or?
Yeah, I do.
Okay. All right. Let me enable some technology over here. And
in honor of Miami playing in the first round of the NCAA basketball, I dug out a Missouri program.
Oh.
Football, though.
Nice.
It's
Bishop's favorite team.
1988.
Yeah. Well, we have priors of Missouri in the NCAA tournament as well in basketball that did not end well for us. So let's see.
This would have been a good Steve Walsh, Leonard Conley, Cleveland Gary in the backfield. Randall Hill as one of your wide receivers. Rob Chudzinski, we could use his ass as a tight end. And then their front seven, they got Willis Pegues, Russell Maryland, Greg Mark, and Bill Hawkins. Not a shabby front four.
What a team.
And then Shannon Clark and Rod Carter as your linebackers. And Bubba McDowell, Bobby Harden, and Donnie Ellis in your secondary.
Those are a lot of historic names there.
Yeah, some pretty good names, and Miami's coming back to that point where, in 20 years from now, we're going to read out a lot of the names that they had. Next week, I'll get the trophy out. It's really
nice.
It's heavy. It's on the floor, but it's on
the All right. So everyone, make sure you tune in next week as we will get to view Larry Bluestein's large.
Yeah, well, the most important thing is we come on next week and we'll have some of the times from the pro day.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. That's true. Yeah,
that's next Monday. Maybe we could do our correspondent Jazz, and maybe he could go down there since he ain't coming on here with us. But then we'll see, and then the following week we'll have a couple of days of practice to talk about. So things are heating up.
It's heating up now. Yes.
Yeah.
Our long multi-week
tonight.
Yeah.
Thanks for
our long off season of barely having an off season has come to an end. Yeah. Spring practice is upon us.
I know it's kind of nice to not have to necessarily just try to find stuff to fill the time and actually have.
The season went all the way to the end of January, and now we're right into spring practice. So, everyone definitely come. DJ and I'll be on Sunday, and then we'll have this show on Monday, breaking down all of that. Also, we have our bracketology annual show tomorrow night, covering the NCAA tournament. So for buckets, so tune into that.
What do you got? Is that early?
I have to actually do my predictions. I haven't done them yet, but we're going to be revealing those on the show, so I actually don't have an answer. I generally pick Miami to go far, but I don't like this bracket playing on the road against Missouri, but we'll see.
Yeah, and then they get Purdue the next
game, which is a monster. So it's not.
But I will say this: I really thought Clemson then I watched him in the finals, so it wasn't. I mean, I saw him in the game, and then they didn't.
Yeah.
Virginia, I don't think has enough depth. But I think next year at this time, Lucas could have a Elite Eight team.
Yeah, that's possible. We got to replace 3 starters, so we'll see.
Yeah, but you had to replace a bunch of them last year from a crappy ass team. So.
Yeah, those weren't good. These are replacing good players. There's a higher bar now.
But that's
I'd much rather be us than Duke, who has to replace like 1,000 studs.
I mean, I'd rather be Duke for the next month. But anyway, we'll be breaking that down. And like I said, DJ and I will have our show on Sunday. We'll have this show Monday. We're gonna pretend like the baseball program doesn't exist temporarily and keep moving forward on that. That pitching is real, man. 20 or
look at Italy. Not one kid's ever been to Rome, and they're up 2-1.
It's America. It might be America. It's a bunch of Italian Americans carrying the flag there. So
yeah, that's nuts. It's all these people in Italy staying up till 5 a.m. for guys they never even heard of.
Yeah, actually, Italy. I mean, this is a whole tangent, but they have their constitution actually. If you can prove Italian descent, you're automatically an Italian citizen. So they're actually trying to change it now, and it's caught up in like their constitutional law because they passed a law taking that away. But if you can trace your bloodline, like even through grandparents or whatever, to an Italian citizen, you can just fill out paperwork and get grand citizenship. So technically,
if they win this whole thing, I want to see the parade down the Autostrada there.
Gotta do it, yeah.
Well, the United States tomorrow night have a Met starting for them, so that's good.
There you go. On that note, we will leave you. Thanks for joining me. We'll be back next week. And as always, go Canes.
Go Canes.
The 6 Rig Kane Show. Yeah. The 6 Rig Kane Show. Yeah. The 6 Rings Kane Show. You know.